going on, everybody? It's your boy HP, and you're listening to the Unsportsmanlike Conduct podcast, a podcast for the average Joe that covers football, my beloved New York Giants, some baseball and basketball from time to time, and any other current events impacting our sports world. Before I get started with today's agenda, everyone please follow me on Instagram. That's _unsportsmanlike_conduct. Again, that's _unsportsmanlike_conduct. I'm also on Twitter now, so everyone please follow me on Twitter. That's _unsportsman. And lastly, but most importantly, please subscribe to my YouTube page. If you're listening to this podcast, you might as well subscribe. So today's agenda, a very, very important topic. This New York Giants defense might just be better than what a lot of folks, a lot of experts, and a lot of haters are going to give us credit for. I'm going to explain why. Let's get this episode started. So a lot of folks are giving Dave Gettleman a lot of credit for rebuilding the offensive line, and I'm with you. I'm actually one of the first people that's advocated for some of the great moves that Gettleman has done so far during his general manager tenure with the New York Giants. I also think he's done a great job rebuilding this linebacking group. But what I think he's done a tremendous job, even better than rebuilding the offensive line and rebuilding that linebacking group, is our secondary. Our secondary right now is so stacked, and that's going to be our anchor for this defense for years to come. Because right now, if you think about it, we don't have a legitimate pass rusher on our front seven. Our defensive linemen can't get to the quarterback that well, and our outside linebackers can't get to the quarterback that well either. Right? I mean, there's some players that shown flashes that they can get to the quarterback, but we don't have a legitimate pass rusher that we know for a fact will get us between 10 to 15 sacks a year every single season. That we know will get to the backfield every single play. That we know that we can rely on every passing down, can pin their ears back and get to the quarterback. We don't get to the quarterback. We haven't gotten to the quarterback, and we didn't address it this offseason, and we didn't address it in the draft. But what we did address is cornerback. And it's so strange because usually teams like to rebuild their defenses from the ground up. They start off with the defensive line, then they get the linebackers, then they fill out that secondary. And the reason why they do this is because of the fact that you can have a great cornerback and a great safety, but if you don't have folks that can get to the quarterback, then those corners and those safeties are defending for that much more longer. Because the quarterback has that much more time to sit in the pocket comfortably and look for the wide open receiver. Because receivers have that much more time to go through their route trees. So that's why GMs and coaches like to sort of rebuild their defense from the ground up. They like to get the pass rushers first because, what you can do is you can sort of disguise bad defensive backs by having a great front seven, because as long as you can get to the quarterback quick, your defensive backs will be positioned to make plays on that ball. Whether it's a bad throw or whether the quarterback has to just throw it away. And some of these offenses, they're sort of creating these complex routes where these route trees take longer to develop than usual. So because of all that, by taking all that into consideration, usually a pass rush is what a lot of teams like to focus on, and which is why, including myself and all the other New York Giants fans and all these other football analysts, were scratching their head when the New York Giants didn't draft Josh Allen. Or why when we drafted Dexter Lawrence, why we didn't draft Montez Sweat, because the Giants needed a pass rusher. But you know what? Even though we didn't address pass rusher, we addressed secondary, and our secondary is stacked. And I'm going to go through this list. We have veteran Janoris Jenkins. Jack Rabbit has been a stud for the New York Giants. A couple of years ago when Jerry Reese spent all of that money in free agency, think about it. There's a reason why Janoris Jenkins is the only one standing from that free agency. We let go of Snacks. We let go of Olivier Vernon. Janoris Jenkins is going to lead these young dogs to be a feisty playmaking secondary, because that's what Janoris Jenkins is. He gets in your face and he gets nasty, and you know what? He can make a play on the ball. Whether it's a tip pass or an interception, Janoris Jenkins is there. And then we drafted in the first round Deandre Baker, cornerback out of Georgia. You all know how I feel about Deandre Baker. If you've listened to my past episodes, if you follow me on Instagram, I am a big fan of Deandre Baker. He is going to be a physical cornerback, and he's going to disrupt receivers at the line of scrimmage. And then so that's going to go into my next point. I mentioned the fact that we may not have a pass rusher that can get to the quarterback quick, but we do have cornerbacks that can disrupt receivers and take them out of their rhythm to the point where, you know what, it may allow us a little bit more time for our defensive linemen to get to the quarterback because receivers won't be able to get open quicker. And with those two cornerbacks, Janoris Jenkins and Deandre Baker, we can accomplish that. We can compensate for a lack of pass rushers. So now we got two dogs as our boundary corners, Deandre Baker and Jackrabbit. And to make things better, we now currently have a competition for our third cornerback position. That's between 4th-round pick Julian Love out of Notre Dame and second-year player Grant Haley. For those of you who don't know, Grant Haley ended up playing towards the second half of the year last year for the New York Giants, and he had some pretty good, meaningful snaps for us. And he's been killing it all practice. Him and Julian Love are literally head-to-head, toe-to-toe, fighting for that slot corner position. Which is why I think we're in a great position right now to move around a lot of these defensive backs. Because think about it, don't forget about Sam Beal, who we drafted in the 2018 supplemental draft. He's actually given Deandre Baker a run for his money. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think he's going to take Deandre Baker's starting position at boundary corner, but he's giving him a run for his money. So now you have 4 defensive backs. You have Janoris Jenkins, Deandre Baker, 2 guys who are more than willing and more than capable of playing great at the slot corner position in Grant Haley and Julian Love. And then you have Sam Beal, who you can also sort of rotate in and out between Janoris Jenkins and Deandre Baker. Now you got 5 legitimate cornerbacks that you can play. And I wouldn't even be surprised if James Bedric's like, you know what, screw this. Let's run a dime package. Dime packages, for those of you who don't know, you have 4 defensive linemen. You only have 1 linebacker who I would like to think would be Lorenzo Carter or B.J. Goodson. Or even Alec Ogletree, actually, because I think all those linebackers are just more than capable of playing a really good football, obviously. You know, Alec Ogletree had a great year for the New York Giants. Lorenzo Carter had a promising rookie year. And as always, as I reiterate in almost every episode, I just wish they played B.J. Goodson more downs. But let me just get back to my point. A dime package is when you have 4 defensive linemen, you have 1 linebacker, and you have 6 defensive backs. Usually you'll have your 2 safeties, and then you'll have your 4 defensive, you have your 4 cornerbacks, or actually any other position. It could be a safety as well. It's really just any defensive back that can sort of line up, sort of man-to-man with the opposing receiver or tight end. You can still actually have a dime package and run zone coverages as well. But it's usually 6 defensive backs, 4 defensive linemen, and 1 linebacker. Currently, we have the personnel to do that. Because the point of the dime package is to say, look, we're not going to rush the quarterback. We're going to let our defensive backs confuse the quarterback. We're going to let our defensive backs, we're going to trust that our defensive backs won't let receivers get open. And we're currently primed to do that. And I think the Los Angeles Chargers ran a lot of dime packages as well because they were so deep and stacked in the secondary the same way we are. They had Desmond King, Casey Hayward, Derwin James. You know, so they were pretty stacked as well. So this is it's something to look out for. And I just named only the cornerbacks. I didn't even get to the safeties yet. Because we have Jabril Peppers as our safety. Yeah, we lost Landon Collins. I get it. But Jabril Peppers is a more rangy version of Landon Collins. He's a little more slimmer than Landon Collins is. He's almost in a way a poor man's Landon Collins. That's the best way I can put it. But the thing about Jabril Peppers is he's a little bit more younger, obviously, than Landon Collins. And he hasn't even reached his full potential yet. He had a decent year with the Cleveland Browns last year, but they didn't play him that much because there was a lot of competition in that stacked secondary as well. So think about it like this. James Bedrick is going to rely on Jabril Peppers to lead that secondary at the safety position. So you know he's going to get a lot of the snaps. He may get 80 to 90% of the snaps. He didn't get that many snaps with the Cleveland Browns. I mean, imagine if he plays more snaps, how much more he can do. Jabril Peppers is primed to not only have a big year for the Giants, but this is an important year for his career because he has to prove to the New York Giants that this trade was worth it. Trading Odell Beckham was worth it. and that he can lead as the safety for our team. Because the way I see it is the safety is sort of the leader of the secondary. The way the linebacker is, the middle linebacker is the leader of the front seven. That's why it's so important that Jabril Peppers sort of hones in and embraces that role. Because, you know, if you think about it, him, Jack Rabbit, and then Antoine Bethea, they're probably the three oldest players in that secondary that I can think of just off the top of my head. Everyone else is a rookie or a second-year player. Jabril Peppers is, I believe in Jabril Peppers. I think he's going to ball out because I think he has a chip on his shoulder. And again, similarly to all the other players in the secondary, nothing but great remarks from the reports out of training camp and OTAs. These guys are having great OTAs. I mean, look, they're picking off Eli. They're stressing out Daniel Jones where Daniel Jones has to decide to tuck it and scramble. I mean, these guys are doing well. And think about it like this: they're defending New York Giants receivers who are pretty good receivers. They're defending Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram. Those guys are no joke. So they're getting enough reps in practice, enough exposure in practice against some pretty good wide receivers as well. Granted, they aren't Odell Beckham. I know they may not be true number one wide receivers in any other team, but they're good enough wide receivers. And they're getting enough exposure. And the way I look at this team is, if our secondary, based off the potential that I'm describing, can not only probably force a lot of turnovers, but, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if we probably lead the league or top 5 in the league in sort of the number of big plays allowed. I don't think we give up a lot of pass yardage, because I think our DBs are going to be that good. Again, if they reach that potential, because a lot of our players, a lot of the people that are going to be starting are second year, third year, and rookies. It's only based off potential. If they hit that potential coming out of, sort of the draft, coming out of college, then I think the New York Giants are primed to be a very lethal secondary, a very lethal defense. And I've always talked about how a good pass rush takes the pressure off of your defensive backs. But maybe this time it's a little bit more different. Maybe our defensive backs take the pressure off our front seven entirely. Maybe our defensive backs end up playing so well that while the quarterback may have a couple of more seconds to sit in the pocket, the quarterback won't be able to find receivers open because our DBs will be able to hold them up for that long. Because I think when you can run a nickel package and a dime package, that means you have enough talented defensive backs to run those packages and to defend receivers. Because think about it this way. Every team has about a good 2 receivers. That either includes 2 receivers just stand alone or 1 good receiver and a tight end. Many teams don't have multiple good receiving options. So just sort of taking that into consideration, if our DBs outweigh the amount of talent and in terms of man count, the amount of receivers the opposing team has, then that gives our secondary an advantage almost every single time. So with that said, I think that while it may take a little bit longer for our defensive line to get to the quarterback, they may end up just getting to the quarterback, because every quarterback can't scramble. Every quarterback isn't a mobile quarterback. So yes, it may take a little bit longer. The quarterback will have a little bit more time to throw. Maybe he doesn't throw, because we're going to have dogs like Janoris Jenkins, Deandre Baker closing up the sidelines, then clogging up the middle, clogging up the slot. We'll have Julian Love. We'll have Grant Haley. We'll have Jabril Peppers at times coming into the box. I mean, man, I can't wait to see the type of blitz packages that James Bettcher's going to dial up with this amount of talented DBs. You can just bring in Jabril Peppers. If you're not too confident on his coverage skills, you don't need to be, because we have all other DBs to do so. I remember a couple of years ago when our secondary was pretty slim. We had aging Rogers Cromartie. Landon Collins was still trying to come into his own, and then we had Jack Rabbit. And I remember even at that time, Spagnuolo, who was our defensive coordinator at the time, had to bring in Landon Collins for a blitz every single play. And I remember so strangely about the fact that even Cromartie had to come in on blitz plays. And then our next available best cornerback outside of Janoris Jenkins was freaking Eli Apple. Well, he got traded to the Saints for a 4th-round pick. This time it's just way different. And I'm getting a way different vibe and a way different energy. And there are a lot of, we're going to face, Carson Wentz, who's a gunslinger. I think we can make him get, force some turnovers. I'm not worried about Case Keenum on the Washington Redskins. And you know what? You want to throw Dwayne Haskins in? You think he's going to be that great? I can't wait to confuse the shit out of that rookie quarterback. Because the Redskins aren't stacked at wide receiver either. So that's a perfect example of where I think our secondary will be successful against. And then the Cowboys, you all know how I feel about Dak Prescott. Amari Cooper's their best receiver. They don't have a legitimate tight end, and they don't have a legitimate second and third wide receiver option. And we all know, look, they had Cole Beasley, who was a really good slot receiver, and they almost never utilized because they wanted to force feed Amari Cooper. Or even before Amari Cooper's time, they wanted to force feed Dez Bryant. That team doesn't know how to dial up offenses. That team does not know how to dial up passing plays. So I think Dak Prescott, while he's very careful with the football, may end up throwing a considerable amount of picks against us. I think our secondary is going to have a pretty good success in the division. I think the only team we may end up having some sort of struggles against is Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles because they actually have a variety of receiving weapons. They have Alshon, they have Nelson Aguilar, they have Deshaun Jackson, and obviously they have Ertz. So that's a good collection of receiving talent. The rest of the division doesn't have that type of receiving talent. And I think this year, while we may not end up making it to the playoffs, it's very unlikely that we make it to the playoffs. I think our defense is going to show, based off of that secondary's performance, that the defense is heading into the right direction. That we're on an upward trend. And that we are, in fact, not only rebuilding, but remaining competitive at the same time. And I'll even go so bold to say we don't end up having a top 10 pick in next year's draft. I think we fall out of the top 10 from a NFL draft standpoint because I think that's how much improved our team is going to be, and that's because of this secondary. And which is going to lead me to my next position group, which is the linebackers. Again, Dave Gettleman over the last 2 off seasons has solidified this linebacking group. We already had B.J. Goodson previously. We obviously traded for Alec Ogletree. And then we drafted Lorenzo Carter in last year's NFL draft. And then we signed some other outside linebackers like Kareem Martin and Marcus Golden, who previously played for the Arizona Cardinals. So those are 2 guys that James Bettcher can rely on to not only continuously teach all the other players the system, but also be effective because James Bettcher is obviously going to put those linebackers in position to succeed. And I'm excited again to see what this linebacking group's going to do because I think they played pretty decently last year. And again, my only knock on it is they need to play B.J. Goodson more and they need to play Lorenzo Carter more, which I think they will because I think that's what's coming out of camp. I think there's high expectations for Lorenzo Carter. Folks, I think Lorenzo Carter is going to be our next legitimate Pro Bowl linebacker. I don't think he makes it to the Pro Bowl this year. Give him a couple of years, but Lorenzo Carter is going to be that guy. He is your prototypical outside linebacker. From a speed standpoint, from a body weight and height standpoint, I'm in love with Lorenzo Carter, and I think he's going to ball out this year. He can get to the quarterback. He's a good tackler. He's rangy. He can move sideline to sideline. I think he's going to have a great, great year this year. Which, in a way, when I think about it, maybe that's why they didn't want to draft a pass rusher so early. Maybe that's why they didn't draft Josh Allen with the 6th overall pick. Maybe that's why they didn't draft Montez Sweat with the 17th overall pick. Because they know they have Lorenzo Carter. Maybe that's the secret. I mean, I honestly, because think about it, Josh Allen is an outside linebacker. That was the guy that we thought, and because of his uncanny talent, would be the giant savior for that pass rushing team. But maybe they think Lorenzo Carter can do that. And maybe he can because he's shown flashes of it in his rookie year. He's shown that he can be a good, productive linebacker. He wasn't given that many snaps. That's very, very important. But coming out of camp, again, people are very excited for Lorenzo Carter. The expectations are through the roof for Lorenzo Carter. So I think maybe that might be our answer for pass rusher. So now we have a legitimate outside linebacker, and then we also have Marcus Golden, who's looking really good and healthy as on the other end of the linebacking group. So maybe this might be the year where James Bettcher feels confident, has enough more seasoned players under the system, has enough good young DBs where he's thinking, okay, this is where I can actually be successful and run my scheme. Maybe he didn't feel that comfortable doing it last year. And if you think about it, even though we finished in the mid-20s from a total defense standpoint, we still created a good amount of turnovers. Our team was getting turnovers last year, especially in the second half of that year. I mean, Alec Ogletree had a career high in interceptions. So I think this team is headed in the right direction, and I think Lorenzo Carter might be the guy we get the production out of. And even Marcus Golden when it comes to a pass rushing standpoint. Maybe. I don't clearly see it, which is a concern for me and is going to lead up to my next position group, which is the defensive line. In a 3-4 defense, this is what our front seven looks like. I'm going to start with the defensive line. B.J. Hill, defensive end. I think they're going to have Dalvin Tomlinson as our nose tackle. And then, strangely enough, Dexter Lawrence as our other defensive end. I think that's what I've read so far, which is a little bit concerning because Dexter Lawrence isn't a pure defensive end. However, in a 3-4 defense, it sort of works that way because you end up relying on your outside linebacker to be that sort of hybrid defensive end / outside linebacker. To be that guy that can pin their ears back on passing downs and go straight to the quarterback and sort of get right to the backfield. So that's what that's going to be our front three in the 3-4, and then our linebackers are going to be, as previously stated, Lorenzo Carter, Alec Ogletree, B.J. Goodson, and then Marcus Golden. And so I think our defense looks like this. Our defense will be a defense that can stop the run. We won't be able to get to the quarterback yet. I don't see the legitimate pass rusher here. It could be Lorenzo Carter, but I don't see who the clear-cut guy is heading into the season. We drafted O'Shane Jimenez in the 3rd round out of Old Dominion University, but from what I'm reading and seeing, he's not getting reps with the first team like the other players are. So that's what's a little concerning because I don't know if our 3rd round pick is going to have an immediate impact this year. And that was supposed to be the guy. That was the defensive end we drafted. So that's just another story to just look out for in sort of in hopes of another improvement from O'Shane Jimenez. I haven't read that he's struggling. I just read that he hasn't been getting enough reps with the first team. So he's probably going to be a bench player, a rotating player for our Giants team. But again, I don't see that pass rusher. So because of that, again, I do see that we will be successful in stopping the run because I think that's what Dexter Lawrence was drafted for. Dalvin Tomlinson is a good nose tackle. B.J. Hill's a good defensive end. We have some pretty good inside linebackers with B.J. Goodson and Alec Ogletree. Hopefully they play B.J. Goodson more. But ultimately, I see this team as someone that can stop the run and be good in pass coverage. And that, my friends, is a recipe for a bend, don't break defense, which I'll take. And I think right now our Achilles heel is pass rush. We won't be able to get to the quarterback. But I think we have enough talent that when teams are driving down the field on us, we'll be able to stop them enough where we force them to punt or at least force them at a minimum to kick field goals. I think we don't give up that many points as well either. Because I think our secondary at the very end is going to hold us up. I think it's going to hold us down. And I think our run defense is also going to prevent other teams from getting, the first down conversions on 3rd and short situations. I think we're going to have a balanced defense, but I think, again, pass rush will be our Achilles heel. And there's going to be some games where we do give up big plays, where we do give up a lot of yards. Because, again, remember, folks, our secondary is very young. We don't have that many veterans. We have Janoris Jenkins. We have Antoine Bethea, who's in his mid-30s. So he's not that explosive. He's not that fast anymore. And then we do have Michael Thomas, who's played great ball for us at the safety position. But other than that, we have a lot of young DBs. So expect them to make mistakes. Expect there to be games here or there where we give up a lot of plays, where we give up that big play. But overall, I think the story of our team is going to be the fact that we have a solid secondary and we get timely stops. When they're driving down and they're getting to our own 40-yard line, that's where it stops. We either force them to punt or we force them to hit field goals. And I think at times it's going to be deep field goals. And there's going to be some, drives, some soul-crushing drives where offenses are getting first downs. They're getting close. They're even getting into red zone situations, and we make key stops. Because we're going to have a stacked defensive line, and then as the theme of this episode, we're going to have a tremendously stacked and talented, feisty playmaking secondary. Expect our team to be top 10, top 15 in interceptions. I think we'll be in the bottom half, obviously, in sacks. But I think we'll also be in the top 15 in rushing yards. And then we'll probably be in the top 15, probably in the top 20 in points allowed. I don't think we break 20 in any category of the defense. I think this New York Giants defense is primed to have a really good year. And while I have us winning between 6 to 8 games, and, I may get killed for saying this by, New York Giants fans who aren't that optimistic this year and by New York Giants haters. But don't be surprised that those 6 to 8 games turn to 8 to 10 games. We may end up winning 8 to 10 games because of the fact that our defense will continuously put us in situations where the ball will end up in Eli Manning or Daniel Jones' hands at the end of football games. I think that's going to be the story. And this story is very, very similar to when Ben McAdoo was the first-year head coach for the New York Giants when we went 11-5. Remember, we had Olivier Vernon, Jason Pierre-Paul, Snacks Harrison. But we didn't have a complete set of DBs, and we didn't have a complete set of linebackers. We ended up being a bend-don't-break defense that year. We gave up some yards, not that many yards, but we didn't give up that many points either. I think we only gave up 17 points that year. And we weren't getting to the quarterback. And we went 11-5. And our offense wasn't scoring that many points because we didn't have an offensive line or a legitimate running back. We only had Odell Beckham because Sterling Shepard was still coming to his own. I believe he was a rookie that year. Or he could have been a second-year player and Evan Ingram was a rookie. So I think this Giants defense is going to be the main story. It's going to be the light. It's going to be the positive light for this team in the 2019-2020 NFL season. And because of that, I think next year, our priorities are going to shift. Where we may not even go for a pass rusher, we may end up going for a wide receiver. The way we went for a wide receiver when we drafted Odell Beckham, the way we went for a wide receiver when we drafted Hakeem Nicks. I wouldn't be surprised if next year the New York Giants use their first-round pick on a wide receiver because they know Golden Tate's getting old, and they know they're going to need a deep threat wide receiver, a big body wide receiver. They'll definitely use it on a wide receiver or a pass rusher. But I think next offseason, the secondary won't be a concern and linebackers won't be a concern. I think Dave Gettleman has set us up by the way he's rebuilt this defense that next offseason, our needs, our weaknesses will be limited because of the way he's been able to fill in the gaps through strategic free agent signings, trades, and obviously meaningful draft picks that can make immediate impacts. And I'm just excited to see this. Again, secondary, the defensive back, the cornerback position is my favorite position in the NFL. And don't be surprised when we start forcing so many turnovers. And that's why there's going to be a lot of pressure on James Bettcher, like I've stated, on I believe it was episode 9. Actually, no, episode 10. In episode 10, I put a lot of pressure on James Bettcher. This is the year that James Bettcher needs to prove to us that his contributions as a coach are showing that this defense is progressing. But I think we will because now James Bettcher has all the toys to play around with. This New York Giants defense is primed to have a great year and lead this team to a competitive year. Not a playoff year, but a competitive year where New York Giants fans can come away at the end of the 2019 season and say, look, we're almost there to being a playoff competitive team, a playoff contending team. And folks, that's about wraps it up. That was episode 12 of the Unsportsmanlike Conduct podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Please make sure you subscribe to my YouTube page. Please make sure you follow me on Instagram. That's _unsportsmanlike_conduct. And I'm also on Twitter now, so please follow me on Twitter. That's _unsportsman. Again, always appreciate your support and your subscription. Peace out. It's your boy HP, Unsportsmanlike Conduct.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.